Hello. So another soft-spoken short stories, and hope this helps you fall asleep, or if you become intrigued. My favorite type of genre is horror, so that's what we're going to be reading today, and I hope you enjoy. This one is called The Eerie Addict. A few years ago, I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Melbourne, Australia. They went on to recall it was my first time living on my own. The apartment block had been built in the 1930s. I'd been there for a few months when I came home from work one day and went into the bathroom. I saw something strange, a wooden board, which had covered a hole in the ceiling that led to a small attic space. It lay fractured in two pieces on the ground. I examined the pieces. The board was an inch thick, and it would have taken Bruce Lee to break it. I thought the landlord had sent someone to work on the attic. I was frozen stiff with fear. Someone is up there for sure, I thought. I emailed pictures to the landlord, asking if anyone had been there, with an undertone of annoyance, since she hadn't warned me. Her reply read, "Please call me as soon as you're able to." I called, and she explained that their last two tenants had said the same thing happened. She promised to replace the board, and she did. Airplane. A month later, I woke up one night around 4 a.m. My body was covered in goosebumps. It felt like someone was rubbing his or her hands on me. Everything was silent, but then I heard a dragging sound coming from above my bed. It was as if someone was pulling a sack of potatoes. I froze, convinced someone was up there. There is no way an animal could make that kind of sound. After 5 minutes, I worked up the courage to turn on the light, armed myself with a cricket bat, and walked to the bathroom. That's when I saw the new board covering the hole was broken into two. I felt sick. The dragging sound had stopped, but I had heard something else, whispering. The sound was clear, coming from the attic. It sounded like children's voices, and I could hear one sentence repeated over and over. "It's your turn. It's your turn." I switched on every light in the apartment to make things feel normal. It was 5 a.m. and dark outside. I watched TV to try to unwind. Then a fuse blew. My pet budgie, Dexter, whom I kept in the kitchen, usually never made a sound at night, but he started squawking like he was being strangled. I'd never heard him make those sort of noises before. He was screaming. I grabbed my car keys, ran out, sat in my car, and waited there until the sun came up. What about his pet? When I saw people walking their dogs, this comforted me enough to go back in. The front door was open, but I figured I might have forgotten to close it when I ran out. I went to the kitchen to check on Dexter, but he wasn't in his cage. I felt sick again. All my windows were closed, so I looked everywhere inside. When I walked to the bathroom, I heard splashing. Dexter was half drowned in the toilet. I took him out, washed him, and dried him. I was so confused. At 8 a.m., I called the landlord and gave her a watered-down version of the night. "Oh, wow, you heard the whispering too?" she said. I stayed in that apartment for another 18 months. I heard the whispering on a few occasions, and twice the board covering the hole in the ceiling moved. Although I lived elsewhere now, the landlord recently called. She said that her new tenants had begged to speak with me about something in their stuff that's been going on there. Forget it. It's their problem now. Okay, so that was the end of that one. Very short. The first comment says, "How would you leave your dog when it sounded like it was being strangled?" I thought. Alright, the next one is called The Phantom Patient. The ambulance company that I used to work for had a haunted ambulance, Rig 12. Recounts, reddit.com user Zerbil. A lot of EMTs had stories about it, but I never had much stock in paranormal stuff. That is, until I had my own experience with Rig 12. My partner and I were working in a rural community at 3 a.m., and it was a pitch dark and completely quiet. We were both dozing. I was in a driver's seat and she was in a passenger seat. I woke up to a muffled voice, but I thought my partner was talking. I told her I was trying to sleep and closed my eyes. I distinctly heard a male voice say, "Oh my God, am I dying?" Followed by a few seconds of heavy breathing. My partner and I sat up straight, looked back into the patient compartment, where it sounded like the voice had come from. Things were quiet for a couple seconds. Then we heard the click of an oxygen bottle regulator and a hiss, as if it was leaking. I turned on the lights and we ran out of the rig. I thought a transient might have climbed in while we were asleep, so we opened the rear doors. No one was there. I checked the oxygen bottles. Neither was open. We didn't sleep much after that. That was another short one. While I look for another one, I can tell you guys about that spooky experience I had when I worked at the hospital. This was like about 4-5 years ago, before I had moved states. So what I do for a living, I'm a pharmacy tech, and I've worked in retail, hospital, long-term care, all kinds of different pharmacies. And the one that stood out to me was the hospital. That one was spooky. Most hospitals, the pharmacy is located like in the basement or the bottom ground floor. Probably because it's the coldest, and pharmacies tend to be very cold. They need to stay cold for the medications, right? I was on my graveyard rotation from last time I recall, and when you go up the hall, there's a long hallway that we have to take in order to get to the elevators in order to deliver the medications. And that was my primary duty. I would have to deliver the medications to the nursing stations. So I went down that long hallway, and when you cut the corner at the end of the hallway was the morgue. They also had to keep that down there because temperature reasons. So I was making my way through the hallway with my cart of medications. And then as I cut the corner, I don't know if you've ever seen like those mirrors that be on the top of the ceiling, so that you can see if someone is coming. If you can't, that way you don't run into them, but you can see people coming. You can see patients and beds coming in the mirror. So when I had cut that corner, I had seen someone. I stopped before I turned the corner because I saw a worker coming with a bed, and there was a person in the bed. And so I stopped. I waited a few minutes, and then I thought to myself, this is kind of taking long. Why aren't they passing by? And when I turned to look over the corner, there was no one there, which was weird because there was no doors nearby or any rooms that they could have gone into without passing me or without me seeing. So that was my first experience. I thought maybe I just saw something. It was graveyard shift. I was tired. So I just continued with my deliveries. So I continued on down the rest of the hallway. You have to turn a corner again. I continued down that hallway. And then at the end, the very end, was the elevators I needed to take to go upstairs. And so I pressed the button for the elevator with my cart of medications. And it finally opens. I was waiting for a good few minutes. Finally opens, and then I get on the elevator, but I'm pushing my cart first to get on. So I had my back turned. It was facing inside the elevator, and then I felt someone tap me on the shoulder. Someone had tapped me on the shoulder, and for some reason my instant thought was, oh, they need me to hold the elevator so they can get on. Which, thinking back, that makes no sense now. So I hurried up, and I heard a voice, and I hurried up and turned around so I could hold the elevator. And when I turned around, there was no one there, and the elevator door stayed open. I had to press the button to close the door, and I was a bit frazzled. And so I just kind of stood there to myself. And I remember that specific elevator ride was very cold, very, very cold. And it could have just been my nerves. I was scared. And I went up and delivered the rest of my medications. I came back down that elevator. I immediately went to the pharmacy, packed my stuff, and I was just sitting there ready to leave. I was so scared because it happened on the same night, and it was very eerie, very, very eerie. And I think that was the last week I actually worked in the hospital. And also with like retail pharmacy, when you're working late at night, some of those places can feel very very haunted as well. I don't know if it's just working late at night, but you would always hear stuff. You would just always hear noises in the back of the building and stuff like that. This is very scary, and it's one thing if you experience those type of things, but when you start talking to your coworkers and they've experienced things, or different people in the hospital or the buildings have experienced things, security will see things on camera, that something is there with someone, but you can't actually see it, but you can see the person reacting. It's pretty creepy, but yeah, I think that was the last time I would work graveyard shift. May not be that scary, but in the moment when you're alone, just late at night, and buildings make noises, it's pretty scary. If walls could talk, right? And we all know a lot of sad things, happy things happen in the hospital. So yeah, never worked hospital again. I hope you enjoyed that little story time. If you stay tuned, I will go ahead and find more stories. Oh, it's a short one we could do. So this one's called Haunted Elsa Doll. The creepy old-fashioned porcelain doll with a Victorian appearance. Red lips, rosy cheeks, and blue eyes, referring to Annabelle, may come to mind when one thinks of a haunted doll. However, it's unlikely that anyone still keeps one in their house, unless the house is Warren's Occult Museum in Monroe. However, these dolls are not the only ones getting possessed. Disney's Frozen Elsa doll, given as a Christmas 2013 gift in the Houston region, made headlines when it appeared to start acting paranormal. For 2 years, the doll was working as it was technically supposed to, reciting phrases from the movie and singing "Let It Go" when a button was pressed. In 2015, it started randomly alternating between English and Spanish languages. The woman who purchased the doll claimed that even with its switch off, the doll would start speaking and singing randomly. In December 2019, the family chose to get rid of the Elsa doll. Despite tossing it in the garbage, the family eventually discovered it hidden inside a bench in their living room weeks later. Following the discovery, Elsa started to speak and sing solely in Spanish, soon after which the family made another attempt to scrap the Elsa doll. The doll was double bagged and put at the bottom of the garbage can, which was soon picked up by waste collectors. The family left for a trip sometime later, but when they were back, the haunted doll was waiting in their backyard. In their last attempt, the family sent Elsa through the mail to a Minnesotan family friend. The doll was double bagged and put at the bottom of the garbage can, which was soon picked up by the waste collectors. The family left for a trip sometime later. When they were back, the haunted doll was waiting in their backyard. In their last attempt, the family sent Elsa through the mail to a Minnesotan family friend who fastened the possessed doll to the front bumper of his truck, according to the woman's most recent update in October 2020. The doll hasn't returned to Houston